Hi everyone, welcome. We have Rudraneel Chattopadhyay with us today. He is a policy advocate and a lawyer, and he's done a lot of interesting things in his life. We are going to discuss those, and those of you are here today. Basically, we are talking about a career in public policy, liberal arts, and how not only a career but liberal arts, international relations, how these things can be relevant for a lawyer's career and how to make a career in these areas, as well as we're going to talk about opportunities that these areas are providing to us today. So, welcome, Rudraneel. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ramanuj, and your team for providing me this platform. I'd be most happy to interact with you. Please
Yes.
take this forward.
So, let's get started.
Yeah.
So, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background so far, your education, and your professional experience, so that our viewers are more familiar with what you are doing.
Okay. Thank you, Ramanuj. So this is this is one area where uh, I get most perplexed to say so that how does one introduce oneself, right? Because there are so many different aspects of my identity that I think or play around with that almost every introduction with every individual is different. So I would try and bring this stages together for all our viewers and the students across that I belong to Vasai, which is a town somewhere in the north of Mumbai. For a good part of time in my life, I had like literally seen a Gram Panchayat function. So just to give you a bit of context, that's where I come from or belong. And over the period of time through schooling, there were a few difficult moments in terms of my like equation with my peers. You could say there were a few instances of very uh, harsh bullying, to say so. And why I'm putting this out over there is it gives a background or a context on which uh, I relate to with my personality or who I am right now or today. So, so when I was going through this phase where it was getting a little difficult in school because of like the slight violence that was there in the kids, a bit of aggression, and I didn't know how to deal with this. It was a time when it was around like fifth grade when the only colorful page that you have in your civics textbook is that of the uh, UN headquarters. I was like damn fascinated about it. Like, why does this one page deserve a color treatment? Why rest of them like the Constitution, Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha, everything is in black and white or of one color? I started reading more about that and came to know that there's this organization which exists to serve people, to ensure that we don't enter into conflicts or war, and there's peace throughout. So that made me really fascinated that here I am in a setting where all that people around me are doing is to like try and bring each other down. And here's this organization which aims at something which is more than just yourself. It's for people. I didn't understand the nuances of politics or how diplomacy plays around or anything, but I got damn fascinated about it. And from that point till now, that fascination was is what is driving me till date. So somewhere in around sixth grade, I got introduced to the idea or concept of MUNs and Model UN conferences. That is, and Model UN conferences are basically simulations of United Nations organization. And the more I did MUNs, the interest of being part of the UN or the fascination kept growing. So the research went on to different levels, and finally I decided that if I wish to take this road towards the UN, I will need to understand more about what countries do, how they interact with each other, and what really drives this entire system of policy at a global level. So the very obvious next step that looked like to me was doing law or studying law, right? When I was joining law school again, it was an interesting time because I really did not have the grades to join law school. Uh, I had appeared for CLAT, but not with my complete willingness. So I didn't want to join the national law schools. For some reason, I thought that joining a national law school would mean that you forsake a lot of your personal life and interactions, uh, because it does have a very strong curriculum. So that's when I had decided that I would want to go for a college which allows me that space to craft my own different things that I want to learn and pick and choose around these areas. And I found that ILS was an interesting place where we could do that because there was a lot of space in the schedule. Uh, so I joined ILS, did law from there.
Which year
Not
was?
which year? This was 2010. I joined in 2010 and I graduated in 2015. So ILS was a time when I was also like playing around and figuring out more about what I want to do next. We can probably delve a little deeper into that later. And immediate succession to that was the Young India Fellowship, which was a program in liberal arts. And after the Young India Fellowship, I went on to join the Quality Council of India, QCI, which is an organization under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, which was set up by the Ministry of Commerce and Industry along with the industry associations like FICCI, CII, ASSOCHAM. And that's where I am working at the moment as well. It's been almost 2 years. So, in terms of my uh, professional life and a little bit of personal context that drives my professional life, that has been the journey till now. So,
Got
over
it.
to you, Ram.
So what do you do at Quality Council of India? Like, what's your role? What's your designation? If you can tell us.
Okay, so when now I joined QCI as a liberal arts graduate, not because I was just a lawyer. It's important that the context is right. So immediately after the Young India Fellowship, or rather during that time, we had campus placements, and one of my very close friends had suggested that I should like just try and see if I fit into this place, and I did. So when I joined QCI at that time, I my first task was to uh, initiate a project which dealt with setting up a, an accreditation system for skill training centers across the country. Now, as a lawyer, as somebody who has also studied or delved into liberal arts a little bit, it's literally out of the blue. So, when you're asked to set up a system that is going to accredit and certify skill training centers, it literally means from scratch you need to understand what this entire domain looks like. You understand the different elements, organizations that are involved in the skilling ecosystem, who are our stakeholders, and then try and design a parameter or a criteria which is going to make an ideal skill training center. So the NSDC, National Skill Development Corporation, they helped us a lot in designing these parameters or criteria. We bettered them over the period of time, and then we had to set up the elements of a call center system, which is going to help people with the queries that they would have regarding setting up these skill training centers. And we also set up this entire process of accreditation and uh, certification of training centers through a tech platform, an online portal, and a mobile app, which is going to reduce the role of the inspector to as little as possible. So, giving a context of how these systems used to work before, that you would have a checklist with pen and paper, and all parameters were mentioned in this. The inspector would go on ground and check these manually and take some areas were given in a qualitative manner. So they would even give a descriptive feedback about it. And more or less, the decision of certifying a particular center was on the inspector. So my role was to ensure that we have a tech platform where the role of the inspector is reduced to as little as possible. So we had to learn how that works on a portal. How can we navigate a user through different stages of a form which has all these parameters, and then the system in a way takes over to see that they like match with what is actually required. And the last stage would that be of the inspector to just go on ground and validate. So then at that stage, my role was to ensure that we have the right inspectors with the right competencies to go on ground and do that job. And wherever required, we would be giving them feedback to
So the
modify them.
accreditation is given by Quality Council of India, right?
Pardon?
The accreditation is given by the Quality Council of India.
No, so the accreditation was given by the National Skill Development Corporation. That was the final signing authority to say so. QCI was the main agency that was involved in inspecting and setting up of this entire accreditation system. The final seal and signature would that be of NSDC, but the processes before that would be that of QCI. So this was the first project on which I was working on.
So, in a nutshell, your job was to collaborate with people and create standards and research, maybe perhaps, and
Yes.
come up with the standards which would be used by NSDC to finally give accreditation to the study centers. Is that correct?
Yes, all of these, and along with that, also to learn the elements of the tech platform and portal, create a system by which our vendor who is creating this website and portal, etc., they would understand what we want as a website. So to entirely design the every single component. So if you click on this button, what happens then? What is the user response? So a lot of this went into understanding how a website is designed and developed and how client requirements are provided. So I consider that also as a huge chunk of work that we had to learn in order to do. So that was the first part of it. And if you would like to know what we are doing now, uh, we are managing the first national platform for private sustainability standards in the country, whereby we see to it that our producers, the smallholders and farmers in India, they are able to comply with standards which are set outside India. So maybe more on this when you would want to know more.
So, what is your designation into this whole project?
At QCI, I am a project associate. Yeah.
Okay, got it. So, how would you describe this job? Is this a policy job or is it something else? Like, what what is it exactly?
Ramanuj, honestly, this is a mix of a lot of things. So that's the best part about this division in QCI. It's called initially it used to be called the chairman's office. Now it's called the project planning and implementation division. And though I am part of the project planning and implementation division, I specifically work with a project or a platform that is being managed by another division, which is the project analysis and documentation division. So one thing common in all these divisions is that you are expected to join the organization and serve for a very short duration. You're not supposed to be looking at this as your career path, or something where you would like to become permanent, to say so. You join in as a consultant, you spend as little time as you can within the organization and create maximum impact, and then use this as your launchpad to do something else. So that's the philosophy of the organization. So now when we speak of our roles in it, we are talking to clients about their requirements. We are talking to our vendors also to communicate what our clients' requirements are. We are bringing people together on a platform to have dialogue. We are creating the documents that are required for those people to understand those issues and nuances of policy, and basically dealing with end to end management of that entire process. So, say policy advocacy, research, uh, like the role to understand technology and what role it plays in it. So, all of these aspects are involved.
Okay. So, So let us go back a little, and why don't you tell us about your experience at Young India Fellowship? Why did you join it? What is it like?
Okay. So, when I was in my second year of law school, that's when YF was being launched, like somewhere around in 2011. 2012 was the first batch of Young India Fellows graduating. So, and one of our seniors from ILS, she was part of the program. And we came to know through word of mouth that there's a program like this where you are fully funded. You get to learn 24 different subjects or 26, whatever around that. You do a lot of like multidisciplinary activities, like you're studying sociology, psychology, philosophy, law, uh, leadership, English, math, science, all of these together. So somewhere around in third year of law school itself, I decided that once we get this first degree in college, I would uh, go ahead and join the YF. So right in my third year itself, I had started like filling the form for the next batch of YF, and somehow I did not end up filling it. But then one more year into law school, and I felt no, no. After fourth year itself, I will just leave and go for the YF because I can't take this like situation anymore in a way.
But
So,
could you do so? Or could you do so like without leaving ILS?
pardon?
Could you go for 1 year at YAF without like kind of leaving leaving ILS? You,
At the idea was not that. The idea was to just leave studying law right in the in between. So once, since it's an integrated course, and at that time Pune University used to give this first degree called Bachelor of Social Legal Sciences. I think by now they have standardized it into BA LLB, and they give it together in the end. But we got a degree after our third year. So my plan was to take that degree and go to YF, but somehow I decided against it. In the fourth year, I thought once again that okay, let's do this. I'm little tired of studying only law over here, and a little bit of frustration was also from the examination system that was in place. So I tried again in fourth year, but didn't complete the form. And finally, somewhere in like fifth year, almost towards the end of the deadline, I had managed to fill in. Now, the reason why I wanted to do YF was that it was a program which was offering me like a lot of different things on one platter. So the closest that I come to something like this is if I have a thali, right? I mean, why am I going for an unlimited thali? Because there are different like things that I can taste at the same time than going for a la carte and paying like 300 for one dish. And instead, I can just pay 350 and get a whole array of dishes, right? So that was the entire idea of YF as well for me. That I would get to learn a lot of different things. Uh, Maybe because of even my financial situation at that time, I would get a decent scholarship as well. So a lot of this can come without me having to make my parents struggle for the finances of it. And the idea was that once I finish law, I have the, in a way, I have the ammunition to understand the entire uh, system, the legal system of the country, how it functions, how it processes. And then, so that gives me the depth as a student in terms of law. I have a deeper understanding of one particular domain. But I also need to broaden my thinking and understanding in other areas to make myself a better thinker or a problem solver. So if you give a situation to me, let's say 3 years back, I'll be approaching it from a very legal point of view. But through the YF or through the program, the idea was to approach the same question from the aspects of sociology, from the aspects of gender, from uh, law, from economics, and if there are technical elements involved, then those as well. So that was the breadth that I was looking at when I applied for the program, and that's why I applied for it.
Okay, so tell us little more about this fellowship. How does it work? Do you get paid something? You said it is fully funded. How do you get selected? If you can tell us a little more about the program.
Okay. So the first three batches of the fellowship were fully funded, uh, and they were also very small in numbers. So I think it
Who
was
was
57.
funding them? Who funded these programs?
Who funded them? Okay, so taking you back a little bit on the journey of the Young India Fellowship, that uh, it came up as an idea that uh, why not set up a university in India which would be catering to liberal arts, which would broaden the horizon of a student in understanding different issues at the same time. The original idea was that to create a tech university and do the same thing, but over the period of time, it crystallized into the founders had then like crystallized this thought into why not a liberal arts university.
Yeah, the story
And
of Ashoka University, how it was set up, I heard it from Sanjeev Bichchandani, who was.
pardon.
I heard the story of how Ashoka University was set up from Sanjeev Bichchandani, who was
Yeah,
one of the first people to come up with the idea and shared it with Ashish Dhawan, I believe.
Ashish Dhawan and Pramath Raj Sinha was roped into
Yeah,
because he had already created a very successful
yeah.
model through the Indian School of Business in Hyderabad.
Yeah, so
So
they were like it's only university which has about 50 founders, if I'm not wrong. Like where it is the basically the ownership of the university is uh, basically diversified. It is not controlled by a few people, and
exactly,
so that makes it a unique university in India. So, but if you
exactly.
tell us tell like that if that is how the university started, why suddenly Young India Fellowship? What was the need for that?
No, so you can look at YF as a program uh, that helped people gauge that uh, what is the perspective of liberal arts for people, or how open are Indian students to even pursue a program like this. So, in a very loose term, and maybe I'm even wrong, the founders would actually be able to explain this in greater detail because they have thought about it. But I look at YF more like uh, something that would be a pilot before Ashoka University is launched, right? Uh, Ashoka was founded, or rather, it was inaugurated in 2014, and the Young India Fellowship had started in 2011. So, the idea of Young India Fellowship was to bring in people from very diverse backgrounds on a same platform, and give them the same experience or education through access to different faculty who could help them open their minds to different types of learnings, like as I told you earlier, the different fields, and see how this kind of a breadth in their learning helps them in what they want to do ahead. So that was the entire idea of the fellowship at that time. So the fellowship got these people who started funding individual students. That okay, there were people from HDFC who would fund two fellows. There would be Zia Modi, or I think AZB was one of the funders of one or two fellows. So that way, every fellow's cost was taken care of back then, like when we are talking about the first 3 years. So they were called the sponsors of a Young India Fellow.
Great,
And along with that, you had the aspect of mentors or industry mentors who would help these fellows to understand what's there outside of the fellowship in a particular area. So that element of mentorship still exists, but the aspect of the sponsoring and one-on-one funding was somehow changed or diversified when the university came into the picture. So when the Ashoka
now they
University
have to
was
pay for themselves. Is that how it is? Like if somebody joins the Young India Fellowship, they have to pay something to do the fellowship.
as of now, the system is somewhat like that. So I will speak of my experience at that time. Uh, I'd filled the form of the fellowship. We had one round of telephonic interview and one round of personal interview. So there's shortlisting happening at every stage. And so when you go for your personal interview, you have to present details of your finances and how you stand and how much scholarship you might require. So you're basically asked to prepare a case in favor for it. And based on that, how your finances are or how your parents' finances are, you are granted either a full scholarship or a full tuition scholarship, or then there are scales and grades of 75%, 60%, 50%, 20%, etc. So that's how the scale goes these days. Yeah. So I studied YF, or I was part of YF through the full tuition scholarship. So I had to pay only the uh, amounts for lodging and boarding.
Got it. So, like if somebody is considering going for this Young India Fellowship, why should they really go for it? Like, what should they expect, and what's the like? What would you say are the top five benefits of going for this? What kind of people should go for this actually in the first place?
Okay, in terms of kinds of people who can go for it, there is no set kind. As long as you are very much interested in wanting to learn more things in your life, that is sufficient for you to be like to be even qualifying as a fellow. Because when you are exposed to a grueling schedule of 26 courses over a year, every course is lasting for around 6 weeks, and along with that you have a module called the experiential learning module, wherein you're working with an organization simultaneously throughout the year over the weekends. uh, at the same time, there are other like extracurricular activities which are constantly happening and you're engaged with. All that you need for being a Young India Fellow is primarily the commitment to go through that process and the willingness to learn and be open minded in whatever is coming across in your way. So, that itself is enough, I would say. Uh, but in terms of people who come for the program, we had in our own batch somebody who was a published author, uh, somebody who was a very famous dancer, artist that way, and people who had been very successful journalists, people from the law background who had made a name for themselves in the area of advocacy, and there were people who had also left their jobs, like 2 years, 3 years jobs, in an organization just because they wanted to learn something different over a period of time. And a lot of people also like looked at the YF as a bridge to do something else. So I have been constantly working in the domain of, let's say, fire safety management. I had a friend who I have a friend who is in fact my flatmate right now, who was in the area of fire safety management, and he was a student of IIT Gandhinagar. So he had decided to take this as a way to learn more, to diversify his areas of learning, and after the fellowship, he has now moved on to uh, what we understand as policy advocacy in the area of corporate and government relationships. So people use it for a lot of different ways and methods.
What are the other things that some of your batchmates are doing from the Young India Fellowship?
Some of my batchmates, one of them is engaged in creating and designing a platform for education. Uh, Around it, I think I'm able to hear my own voice. There is some kind of echo.
Can you hear it now?
Check. No. Okay, so one of them is creating and or is part of an education technology uh, platform of development organization, where they are trying to see how we can reach out to the remotest of villages or the people who would want to learn, who do not have access to brick and mortar institutions, and the quality of teachers or faculty who can teach them through an online program. So it's not just a MOOC. They are trying and developing something which will go beyond the idea of a MOOC to understand the learning objectives, make it extremely interactive for people to uh, interact with the platform and understand, and see to it that like every element of a teacher-student relationship is almost fulfilled. Now, you can't fulfill it absolutely. You cannot remove the teacher or the professor completely from the picture, but to whatever extent a technological platform can do, they are trying to do it. So one of them is involved in that. Then there was another friend who went on to work in a pharmaceutical company. He's helping them develop their business, and he was mainly into civil engineering before he joined the fellowship. But from there to now helping a pharmacy company, a renowned pharmacy company, develop their own. There are a lot of other people in the fellowship who were first timers, or rather, who did not have any professional experience when they joined the fellowship. They were fresh out of college, and then they went on to take up roles in consulting firms. There have been fellows who have made carved a niche for themselves in the area of stand-up comedy, in art, in dance. Uh, One of them is an art curator with a very famous art gallery in Bombay. So the list goes on. Some of them are going for really good educational opportunities in like different colleges across the US and Europe. So a lot of that
That
is what
is
fellows
what
want.
fellows want. Okay. So, if a lawyer or law student is considering doing the Young India Fellowship, what benefits can they look at? Like one thing I understand is that they can get into some really new, interesting area of work, like you have done or some of your batchmates have. Uh, what could be like? But somehow this is a little, up in the air for me. I can't grasp exactly like if I join this, or if say a lawyer wants to join the Young India Fellowship, they are considering it. One thing I can see that they probably could look at going into advocacy and public policy kind of things if they are interested. What else could it be?
So uh, when you're thinking about joining YF, I always like suggest to people that do not look at what you will become or what you will achieve by doing the fellowship. Apart from the fact that you really want to learn and diversify your thinking. So when you're joining the fellowship or when you're even applying for the fellowship, just don't treat it only as a lawyer applying for a liberal arts program and what will I get from it. The idea is to expose yourself to different areas of learning, be open to them, and let those different experiences that you get in the classroom or through interacting with even your peers, because they come from really diverse backgrounds and talents. Uh, that is what the entire essence of the fellowship is. So, speaking of what I felt or received from the fellowship personally, that when I joined the program, I had a very set way of thinking or approaching a particular issue. So, from a very legal point of view, right? So, you give me a problem or there's a situation, I'm trying to constantly classify it as okay. So, if this is a situation, what is the right thing to do, or what should we not do, and why should we do or not do something like this,
Like this.
based on
Or what is the law? What does the law say? What is legal? What is illegal? What will stand in the court? What will not? That's how lawyers typically think.
exactly. And
Exactly,
even
and even
in my communication with my peers over the over the year, or in the first part of the year, I would say that I used to send out emails like I think I remember there was the first email that I was trying to send. Actually, I never sent it. It was in my draft for a very long time. Uh, we were part of a professional and leadership development committee where our job was to facilitate the experiential learning module of the program, along with the program team which is handling or administering the entire fellowship. So we were the student body of sorts to be a liaison between the fellows and the administration to make that process easy. And I had started out the first email saying, "This is to inform you about so and so aspect of the experiential module. I trust that you would take this in the right, something of this nature." Okay, very technical. And then there were
and then they were
like my
like
peers
my peers
around me, the other
around the
members
other
of this
members of
committee, who
this
were like,
committee
"Dude,
were
no,
like, "Dude, no."
this is not happening." And so when that like immediate push came, honestly, I was offended. I was like, hello, like sending out communication is all that we do as lawyers, and we know how to do it best so that like tomorrow there shouldn't be a problem with what we write, right? Nobody should come back and tell us that, oh, because you wrote this. But that was a moment when my friends also made me understand that the same message can be communicated in a very different manner or tone, which could be very conversational or jovial, because you're not just talking from a lawyer's perspective to another lawyer, but to a diverse group of people. And from then on began the journey of writing emails as, "Hey friends, uh, we are up to so and so in so and so hall. If you want to know more, come join us," or something like that. So the first aspect was that of communication, which really hit me, because it was going out of my comfort zone and trying out something different. I was a very like stiff communicator, to say so, before, like especially when it came to written communication. So that made me a more friendly person to talk to over emails, I would say. And then over the period of time, I had numerous notions and very misguided notions about gender, about feminism, I would say. And through different conversations with my peers, through different like engagements in the classroom, it made me think, realize, and see things beyond binaries of like black or white, or I mean, you like, there are things which appear abnormal to you on a usual basis, and then suddenly you start looking at it or trying and understanding the context in which that thing exists or that person exists, and you suddenly become a more empathetic person, to say so.
It makes
Now,
more sense at that point once you start. So basically, you got a whole new perspective.
lot of
So
perspective.
we are at 8:40 right now, and we need to. We probably have spoken quite a bit about Young India Fellowship, but basically, what I'm taking away from the conversation so far is that it's a place where you can invest 1 year and explore new opportunities, and something that other people are doing in that domain. Something may happen, like interesting things can happen, but beyond that, it's not predictable. It is limited only by your imagination. Is that correct to say?
Yes, there are like lot of things that you can do, and it is up to you what you want to achieve from the fellowship, and whether you want to completely change your profession, that's up to you. If you're entering the fellowship to receive validation on something that you have been thinking, you do that, you achieve that. If it is a better human being that you want to become, you can like shape yourself in any way that you want when you're entering the fellowship. The only criteria for that is that when you enter it, be sort of a clay and be open to being shaped by different things that are coming your way.
Got it. So
Right.
we have quite a few questions we have received so far. I think it's time we start taking a few of these.
Sure.
So, what are the job opportunities for lawyers in public policy, and how is the pay? Is being asked by Samprati Srivastava. Can you take that question?
How is it? What is the last?
Basically, she's asking in public policy, what are the different kind of jobs and what kind of pay is available?
Pay.
Yeah, pay.
Okay.
Yeah, like what kind of money do you earn?
All right. So when we speak of public policy again, it is a very diverse area, right? Uh, you can join a Facebook or a Google in their public policy team as a lawyer, and that has a different pay scale that we can definitely imagine what would be. But then there are, for a lawyer, you can also approach public policy and work in research institutions where the pay might be modest, but then it also depends on the kind of work that you want to do. So, firstly, try and understand that what or how do you consider public policy to be, what it means for you, and what area of public policy would you really like to touch upon. So, if you're interested in human rights, then take that interest or niche and go deeper into it. If you would want to understand public administration, which is a different field altogether, so then your core focus should that be on how policies prepared by governments are finally either implemented, or what is the life of a policy in the entire system. So based on what area of public policy you choose, the organization with which you will be working is going to differ. And therefore, again, depending on the nature of the organization, your pay is going to be different. So, if you're talking about aspects of public policy in technology and how it impacts people in India, and if you're delving deeper into that, pursuing that in your higher studies, etc., and finally ending up joining a company like either Facebook or Google, or working with the government for that matter as a consultant, your policy would, your pay would be at a certain scale, which would be, uh, let's say, easily more than 60,000 rupees per month, somewhere around that. But if you're working with policy organizations or research institutions, it might be more modest, somewhere around, let's say, 35, 40,000. Again, speaking of which, there are different fellowships that you can do in the area of public policy. And like, for example, the IIC fellowship, which is administered by U Chicago, it's called International Innovation Corps. There you first get trained in the area of public policy in whichever profession you come from, it doesn't matter, and then you work on a small project with a local government and you implement that. So the pay scale of IIC is again driven by the wages and policies of the U Chicago, and therefore you can imagine that it's going to be way more than what any other research institution is offering in that domain. So it differs a lot, but I'd be happy to connect with you in person also if you want a deeper understanding of this area.
Okay, so actually we have two, three people who have asked the questions in various forms on our YouTube chat. So I think I would add a few things that I know about this area of work. So one, just tell me if this is correct. So I know that on one hand you have obviously the Facebook, Google, or other technology companies, or other companies for that matter. Most of them now have a public policy department where they are very happy to have a public policy expert who basically is doing liaisoning with the government and figuring out uh, areas that need smoothing out. Like for example, one example I can give is that there in Hyderabad, a cab company approached a public a firm actually, which is a public policy firm, saying that please help us to convince the government to change the laws because we want to have all women cabs because women users feel more safe to use a woman driven cab. But what is happening is that under the law you cannot have a woman doing a shift at night. So at night women feel the most unsafe, and what is the point of us having women driven cab for women unless there is unless there is a if the law
Basic.
prevents women from driving it at night itself. So they wanted to get this sorted. So it now imagine there's a problem like this where the government has to be explained that this is in interest of the women and they prefer this. There may be some data, there may be some research, and now somebody has to take this to the government and convince the government. It could be an in-house public policy expert and public policy advocate who's working for the company. And now you have companies like Uber, companies like Google. Many of them have heavily invested in public advocacy and public policy teams. On the other hand, you have there are several firms, just like law firms. There are public policy firms who essentially focus on this area of work. They do the advocacy outside, like they bring some expertise, relationships, existing expertise of influencing the policy and guide, helping the corporate to put their or a company or even a startup sometimes to put their points across to the government so that there is a mutually beneficial outcome. And of course you have think tanks who are basically researching in the area of policy and trying to come up with white papers and research papers and publications that
Right.
can inform the industry as well as the government about different public policy needs and what is happening on the ground, how what is the effects of those policies on the ground. And then I think you have organizations who are like who take up a specific cause and advocate in that area, or they may have a bunch of areas which is uh, in the similar sister areas where they are working. So I can think of BD, who BD is working on access to law, access to justice, and laws changing. There's PRS legislative, which is focusing on better legislations in India, and you have like others who are doing public policy advocacy for specifically for women's rights or internet rights, consumer rights. So there are like people who are focused on a specific area and they work on that. There are people who work only on competition law, doing
Right.
policy advocacy for competition law. So I think this is a spectrum of different kind of jobs which are
Exactly.
available. And of course, you can teach public policy these days. You have like courses on public policy at several places in India and abroad.
But when we speak of public policy, Ahmed, I find it interesting or probably even necessary to address that uh, you do not necessarily need to be studying public policy as a subject in a school, like let's say a master of public policy or something like that, in order to be working in the area of public policy. Those courses definitely give you more tools by which you can do the analysis of uh, public policy or the economics behind it or how this entire ecosystem works as such. They give you perspective. But the ones who may not have access to those areas do not be disheartened that that's the only way to go about it. There's one more emerging area that's coming up, and when we were speaking of different areas, it suddenly struck me that uh, the sustainable development goals, right? There are 15 17 sustainable development goals. Uh, each of these are being, or the government and different institutions are trying to integrate or address each of these different goals across the country, across institutions, across public delivery systems, uh, to see that by 2030 the world is at a certain place. So, and we need more and more lawyers in this domain to address questions related to sustainable development goals and the different aspects of it, because you're talking about uh, legislations which the government is making in order to enable the atmosphere. Uh, these legislations have to also translate into more enabling policies, and these policies have to take shape of different projects and should be implemented on ground. So if you're interested in the area of sustainable development as such, then that is also a domain to be explored, and you can work in any organization which is in line with one or more of these SDGs, uh, to see that how a lawyer fits in this particular domain.
Yeah, I think that's very useful. Now, to answer the pay question, just wanted to say that in most of these jobs, you start at a level of 25 to 35. This is the bracket where you start. It doesn't matter how much experience you may have had before, but when you start, pretty much you start in the bracket of 25,000 to 35,000. In some cases, it could be even less. Now, however, if you are joining a company like Uber, Facebook, Google, or one of the well-funded projects, it could be much more. Like it could be also, or if you're heading a team of researchers, it could be like 50,000. In big companies, it could be upwards of 1 lakh if you have a lot of public policy experience. But honestly speaking, the experience across the board right now is that if you are looking for this job for money, it's probably not the best job. You'll probably have a bunch of things you can do to earn a lot of more money. Like you could be drafting contracts. You can draft 10 contracts in a month, which will take you like 30 hours or 40 hours in total, and you could earn more than what a, policy advocate or a policy researcher earns by working 300 hours in a month. And so that way it is absolutely not comparable. If you are looking for a well paid job, policy advocacy right now in India is not so well paid. Yes, compared to many other things it is well paid, but if you are going to be a well paid lawyer, compared to that it is not. And If you are probably doing a job which pays you upwards of 40,000 or 50,000 at this point, uh, public policy, if you join, it would have to be purely from the interest point of view. You should be ready to take a pay cut probably in the situation is such right now. And even if you do a master degree in public policy abroad, or if you do it in India, National Law School Bangalore offers this. It's not like it changes drastically. It could be a little more or less, but because this is the state of public policy work in India. If you work in a firm, which is a public policy firm, and you have a good background, if you work, you studied in one of the good law schools, you work in a law firm or some sort of that, you could be expecting as a senior associate or something, you could be expecting 50, 60 plus kind of pay package. That is the best case scenario for new entrants in this area. And also the problem is not of the first salary. Many would be willing to take a low first salary if there was a continuous growth over a period of time. But generally in public policy, people do not find a very steady growth. Like, it's probably going to remain at the similar level in most cases. Not going to jump as much as a lawyer in a law firm or a company does, right? Is that more or less correct?
Very much, yes.
Very
And
much,
it also
yes.
very much depends on the organization with which you're working. And often in the area of public policy, you could have the option of switching organizations when you feel that you can probably take your skills now and do something more in some other organization. And but I would still look at it in a more optimistic sense that it can be better. And people do have, like, you have to struggle a little bit in the start, but it keeps getting better as you proceed.
Yeah, and you need to have a strong interest in public policy. It is not about like I have gotten some question about whether it will facilitate me to travel abroad or shift abroad, or is it I'm going to earn a lot of money from this. That's probably not true. I mean, if the money is the only concern, this is not the base. Like, you have to have a genuine interest in public policy. You care about sustainable development, maybe, or you really care about maybe consumer rights or women's rights. For those, it's a great opportunity, but it's not like you are going to have, like, probably your batchmates who will be working in a law firm or starting their own practice or even doing a practice in the high court or their local district court may be earning much more than you do. And it's the truth that you need to be comfortable with. Like, if that is one concern, I'm specifically addressing the questions we got on our YouTube channel. I think we need to make that clear. So, can you tell us a little more about the how liberal arts play a role for a lawyer?
So, Ramanuj, as we already spoke, that liberal arts actually gives you the different angles in which you can think apart from just the legal approach to it, right? So, let me bring this question to the context in which I work at the moment. So, in
So, how
QCI,
would it help a lawyer? Like, how would it help a lawyer specifically when they are, let's say, they learn liberal arts or they engage in liberal arts studies?
Mhm.
Can it actually help their practice or their work?
Okay, so you're talking about a lawyer or who wants to pursue legal practice. How does liberal arts help them, right? So I would say knowingly or unknowingly, you are always a student of liberal arts. That you are constantly looking at a case from different dimensions. You're not looking at it only through the issues that come up. You're also trying to see if, especially when you're talking about cases of public law, right? You're seeing what impact it has on your rights. And when you speak of rights, you on different types of rights, on does it have any pecuniary implications? Does it have any sociological implications? What are the issues for the public at large? So whenever you're dealing with these kind of questions, you are delving into an inquiry which is more to do with sociology, more to do with philosophy of a few things, right? You always have to go into jurisprudence. Now that is the philosophy of the law. uh, you are When you are communicating in the language in which the person before you understands. So that has a lot to do with communication, literature, and aspects of even leadership. That how you conduct yourself, how you understand somebody else's context, how you understand whom you are trying to convince. Uh,
Uh,
so
so,
all of
so
these
if I am
aspects come
arguing a
together.
case in the Supreme Court, which is a matter of, let's say, national importance or fundamental rights case, or let's take some of the very important cases of our times, like maybe it is about net neutrality, right? And you are arguing it in the Supreme Court, or you are arguing about whether criminal defamation laws need to change, or whether it is violative of our fundamental rights. Uh, I think that this kind of a liberal arts approach can do a wonder of good to the, you can bring new perspectives to the discussion, to the arguments, rather than looking at from a very black and white legalistic approach. Because I think this is what some of the great lawyers do. They bring in economic points of view. They
Yes.
bring in a sociology perspective to it. They sometimes bring in issues faced by specific communities. So in a way, don't you think that law is a liberal arts at its heart? Like, at the core of it, lawyering at the highest form is not about filling up forms or getting an order. It is for that right, for justice to be done, you really have to bring a liberal arts approach. Would you? What do you say about that?
I agree with you. And in fact, that is exactly what we do as lawyers, right? That we are not merely out there to, let's say, earn money or get an order in our favor. We are there to serve a particular purpose. Now, that purpose is not by itself in a vacuum. Any client's issue or a problem or any case by itself is not in vacuum. It is always in relationship with the society. So in order to understand that kind of a symbiotic relationship, you need to look at the case from multiple different perspectives to address it and bring that kind of diversity in your arguments itself, which can help the judge see that, oh, so this is not a one dimensional case. It's not that there's a law that's getting violated. Maybe yes, that's true. But apart from that, there are multiple layers to this case which this particular advocate has thought about. So it doesn't just become a very technical judicial method of thinking only, but also as human beings, we take an inquiry into the depth of the matter at different levels. So that's where I think it's perfectly what a lawyer does in general, which is also a lot to do with liberal arts. And one interesting thing that I find that in legal education that we have in our country or anywhere, we do not directly start with any law unless you're doing the
Yeah,
3-year
absolutely.
program.
That was the idea of, like, when Madhav Menon started National Law School Bangalore and this whole new curriculum was created. The idea was that law is a liberal arts education and lawyers must learn economics,
Yes.
sociology, legal history in fact, and I remember we had a lecture by Professor Upendra Bakshi at NUJS where he emphasized this a lot, and he explained how law is a liberal arts education and how why you need to learn sociology, why you need to, because we didn't want to, honestly. Like, we were in college and we were like, why are they teaching us economics? This sucks. Like, why why do we have to read Keynes's theory? Because we are not going to use this. We are lawyers. We are going to argue in courts. You're going to write documents. Teach us those things. Why are you making us do it? And I think there it was critical that these law schools started teaching us these sociology, economics, are the two most important, at least for me, very important. I think legal history also could be very powerful if taught well. Similarly, a number of areas, even like things like international relations.
Yes.
I mean, I see a lot of potential, but do you think a justice is being done in law schools today with respect to this?
On these other subjects which bring in the liberal arts dimension.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm saying that, do we have, like, we have these subjects, yes, and law was supposed to be a liberal arts education, but is it sufficiently liberal arts, or have we fallen back into the trap of being a formalistic education where it's all about learning the black and white law? This is how it works. This is how it is to be done. Rule based studying, like we learn a bunch of rules and we forget to kind of question them, forget to understand in the context in which they exist.
So, in one area, I feel that there is a demarcation that we have in the way in which we study our program, right? The first 2 years in most colleges have these different uh, liberal arts subjects to say, or rather, the different subjects apart from core law, like economics, history, etc., coming in at the very beginning, and then they somehow disappear in the rest of the 3 years. That is where I think that there is a gap. Now,
That is not necessary. I remember how many times I did a project on, maybe on on maritime insurance, but I will be writing it from point of a sociological point of view, a sociological analysis of maritime insurance system. You can do that, and most
yes,
of my projects would be sometimes about economic analysis, or it would involve a sociological analysis. So if you're writing about environmental law, you cannot understand environmental law without understanding the economics behind it. Environmental law would not stand, would not work if your economics behind it is not sound. If
right.
you are having a polluting factory, now you want to continue it or do you want to stop it? There are important economics concepts which help you to understand that, and like factor in different kind of costs. And like, without understanding economics, I don't understand how can you even get uh, good at environmental law, or for that matter, without understanding sociology, how can you address environmental problems as a lawyer? And if you try to, you'll always fail. So there's no question about what is the need. What I was talking about was that we are failing at it, and there, I think there's no doubt that we are failing at it in the current legal education system. It is happening, and it is not taught properly in the first 2 years either, or 3 years. I don't know, in some colleges maybe 2 3 years. And especially you are saying that when once you start legal subjects, we fail to see the connection between the legal subjects, and these things may be a few of the concepts that we have studied.
And
What do you think?
we are not instigated to see those linkages. So,
Yeah, unfortunately. So let's say whoever is watching this today, what would you say to them if you want to become a powerful lawyer, if you want to become an extraordinary lawyer? How, what can you do? Because your college is not going to teach you. So what can you do to educate yourself to become a, a critical thinker in terms of liberal arts, as far as your legal profession is concerned?
okay. So, Ramanuj, when we speak of being a critical thinker, uh, I find that it, as soon as we start expanding the dimensions in which we are thinking and look at one issue from multiple different angles and not merely in binaries, we are already critically thinking in a way. Uh, our education system at its core, like when we are speaking of the school education, for whatever problems it does have, it is interesting that it is actually a liberal arts education right in there. You're studying math, science, English, EVS, uh, and a whole array of different things at a very early age. Somewhere around your 10th and 12th grade, I don't know what is the huge need of then choosing a domain. So just keep that interest of wanting to know more from different areas or wanting to learn different areas. Just keep that alive from right from your school days to even in your law school. Just keep reading more and more things that interest you. If you're not getting that from your law school, then just do it by yourself. Whatever it is that you are interested in, Just take that up, start reading it. The more you read, you will come across names of people who have written more books. The footnotes are very important. So when you look at a particular footnote, you get to understand that where was this idea originally from, or where it is sourced from, to say so, or where it is developed from. So you can always trace that back, read a little bit more on it. Now, when you keep doing this for whatever areas you are interested in, you suddenly start like harnessing an entire pool of knowledge by yourself. And whenever you come across people of different interests also around you, I would say, if you even don't feel like just going and talking to a random person out there, but still try and do it, because you will start to know from them a lot of different things that can help you in learning. And somehow, sometimes those conversations are what also last and take you to different places. They can help you
They can
connect
help
to
you
other
connect
people
to other
who
people
are
who
related
are related uh,
in that
in
same
that
domain or
domain
area.
or area.
So that
So that
quest for
quest
knowledge
for
is
knowledge
something
is
which I
something
think
which I think.
should be constantly nurtured, even if the law school or the institution is not providing it or catering to you directly.
Yeah, I think the important message to take from this discussion is that you are on your own as far as your education is concerned, especially in this domain. You might be having people teach you IPC and Evidence Act, but probably nobody is going to teach you applied psychology or philosophy or things that may be really useful for you. But see, the thing is that you can be a good lawyer by reading the law, by practicing it, by learning how to draft contracts, by practicing in the court again and again. And but very soon we get tied up into a box, and sometimes we fail to grow as a lawyer, as a person, as an individual. We stop growing because we are doing the same things every day, and we are kind of circumscribed into a boundary. And the way to get out of that as a law student, as a lawyer, the critical thing to do, I think liberal arts is the opportunity for us. And if you read the biographies of our great lawyers from MC Chagla to uh, Ram Jethmalani, Fali Nariman, you'd see that they all had this kind of an education where they were reading up themselves about philosophy, about completely unrelated things, which seems that there is no immediate direct impact on their uh, work, but it informed them as great thinkers, influencers who brought on board amazing uh, solutions, amazing thought process that influenced the judges eventually and literally wrote our history, right, in this country. So I think if you want to be counted amongst them, or even for your forget you, if you don't want to be a great lawyer just like that, but also you want to grow yourself, when you file whenever you find yourself stagnating and stuck in a box, I think one great habit you can create is that you can create a reading list, buy some books and start reading. I can think of a number of books that I have read that have really changed my life. And yeah, I mean, we could share some names, but we don't want to restrict you to certain readings. But yeah,
Or just go
or
to a
just go to
library.
a library.
Don't even need to
Don't
buy
even
them.
need to buy. So I'm a little skeptical about going to libraries, Rudraneel, because
Yeah.
libraries kind of impose their choice of what you should be reading. To be honest, like
Yeah. At the
how
same
the
time,
book.
for the ones who
Cannot
may not
may
have the
not have
ability
the ability
or access
or
at that time
access at
to
that
buy
time to buy
the book,
the
it's
book,
always a
it's
good
always a
start.
good start.
Maybe try
Maybe
different
try different
libraries.
libraries. Sure, sure. But these days you can get all the classics and great books online in form of PDF. If you want to read, you will find it, and
Yes.
yes, and you can go to when you know what you want to read. Specifically, going to the library and getting it is a better idea, because library will also throw a lot of garbage at you, which you are supposed to read. But yeah, I mean, I one must be careful. It's a difference between watching TV and watching whatever TV is showing you, and you going and looking up something that you want to watch and watching that. Like if you just go to YouTube, YouTube will show you a bunch of things which is most popular at the moment, trending or getting the most advertising dollars. But it's not necessarily what is good for you or what you would be wanting to watch. So it is important to create that discerning attitude that I am going to find out what is relevant for me at the moment, and I'm going to read that, not what the system throws at me. I think that's very critical.
So when you speak of that, Amanus, very interestingly, a thought comes in that we spend a lot of time on Facebook. At least I do, and many of us might relate to this. That because the user interface has become so easy, we just keep scrolling, right? Whatever is coming up. So how do you
It is
convert?
addictive. It is addictive. It's like cigarette. Like it is. There is a lot of science and research that has gone into Facebook in making it as addictive as possible.
Exactly.
A lot of tasting, a lot of study of human behavior, and now it is so addictive that it's literally it's as addictive as a cigarette or alcohol, and it's incredible. But by studying the human brain, researchers are telling us that Facebook is as addictive as a cigarette and as debilitating. Like your addiction to social media can ruin your life if it is not brought under control.
But how do we now use this in our own favor? That so Facebook gives you access to pages of prominent media websites and research institutions and their publications. Also, go to their pages and put your option of see first. So when you come to Facebook, the first thing that you see is wherever you have marked see first, a whole range of articles from the sources that you would want to read. And I treat that as my reading list often. So the first articles that I see is that of Foreign Policy magazine or maybe from the Hindu, whatever news is out there. We could start with that, and then after reading those articles, you can then like just keep jumping on to other articles and read this. So if you're spending time on that,
I think
it's
that's
well.
a great suggestion. Personally, what I do is that I have an app on my Chrome which blocks my Facebook newsfeed completely. So I can use Facebook as a communication tool, but I will not get to see there is no newsfeed for me on
Oh
Facebook.
my god!
Yeah, but when I use it from my phone, I do get to see that. But
Right,
on my computer, because I work on my computer, I've ensured that I do not get to see a newsfeed at all.
at all.
Because again, I want to read what I want to read, and I'll definitely read. Every day I end up reading a lot, but I would be reading what I choose to read, not what they throw at me, because I believe that they have an agenda at whatever they're giving to me. They have an algorithm to.
You like it or not, they're constantly throwing things at you to read. So it's better to also subscribe to Congress while you subscribe to BJP, while you subscribe to Samajwadi Party, and read whatever is coming up and see what you make out of it by applying your own logic. Yeah.
Okay, I think that was a great discussion. We have conveniently crossed like 16 minutes after 9 o'clock. So
Have,
we got to finish this now. And thank you so much for coming, Rudraneel. We still have 4 viewers who are dutifully watching this discussion. So thank you very much for being with us much beyond the allotted hour. And hope to see you again tomorrow. We have more interesting discussions. And please do recommend other interesting people that we can invite to An Hour with LawSikho. Tell the interesting people in your life that they should come and have a good conversation with us, and tell your
absolutely.
friends to subscribe. So thank you very much, Rudraneel. It was really a good conversation. I enjoyed this conversation thoroughly. I hope you liked it too. And do stay in touch. And we hope to have you again on our uh, uh, on this talk show, talking more about what else interests you, because 1 hour 15 minutes was definitely too less.
Thank you. And special thanks to your team, especially Mohan and Snigdha, who have been constantly in touch and trying to make this happen in reality. So many thanks to them and to you for having me over and facilitating this discussion. And to our viewers who have spent their time watching us. Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Bye. Hope to see you tomorrow again. Bye.